Hello, I am Brother Kelly Hughes, Chaplain of the Arts. We are broadcasting live to tape from the beautiful Valiant Theatre here in the heart of Winnipeg's greasy Tenderloin. This is Kelly Hughes Live Slices, one guest, 1 hour here on UMFM every Saturday, 1 to 2. My guest today is Christian Cassidy. Thanks so much for joining me.
Kelly, thank you for having me.
Former UMFM host.
Yes. Happy to have this air during Pledge Drive.
Yeah, Pledge-O-Rama.
Pledge-O-Rama.
How long did you do your show for?
About 3.5 years.
Yeah.
In the 2010s.
Yeah.
And it was a talk show, kind of history based, obviously.
Did you have guests every week?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes had guests. Towards the end, I got into guests.
Yeah.
Initially, it was mostly me
talking
and a bit of odd music, the Kubasonics and groups like that. And it was a really fun time. Though we were talking about the air to tape, and I had to go to the studio.
Yeah,
I needed that. I needed that hard deadline where you got to be somewhere. Whatever research you got done, and go in and do it.
Yeah, I did a show on CQW for 10 years, and part of that time was during the pandemic, and so we got locked out of the university because the university was like, okay, everybody out. Yeah. They were doing remote classes and whatever, and they kind of didn't really. We were kind of an afterthought. They didn't really care, about. We were trying to come up with a plan to sort of continue, but anyway. So at first, I was trying to do the pre-records, and I was. I just got so bogged down in all the technical stuff. And I was just telling you just what I was saying just now. I'm just recording this on my phone, which is sitting here on a tripod. And then when it's over, I'm just going to clip the beginning and the end off. And I'm just going to pretty much just literally just upload it to, YouTube and clips to a couple other places. And it's so fast. But yeah, that sort of, I had the same problem with that whole production sort of thing because when you're doing it live, you just have to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
doesn't
like,
matter how you're feeling, doesn't matter how unprepared
I'm going to do
feel.
this, or this, and I'm going to go, and you can't fuck around. You can't oh, I don't like that. I'm going to start again. I don't, and actually, so when we actually sort of reopened the station at CQW, we were in the Fortune block. They were letting us use a little space right in between. Times changed in the Modern Electric Lunch.
Oh yeah, yes.
And we had a little satellite studio there. I was the second person to use the studio. The first person was Ron Robinson at 6 a.m. or whenever he does his show. Yeah. And because I was so happy, to be back and to be able to have a place where I could sit with a person and do the thing and not because I want to do what you call the content. I don't want to, do all the technical stuff, which is,
for sure.
UMFM is, they've been great with that. We've been doing the show for a few months. And just again, I'm supposed to be mentioning this, and of course, I want to mention this. We are right at the beginning of UMFM's Pledge-O-Rama. If you're listening to this live or watching this in the next couple of weeks. So go to umfm.com. I think we're trying to raise $30,000 or $35,000. It's not really that much, but that's part of our budget, and we are very happy to have community support because there's nobody else wants to let me do my show anywhere. I mean, UMFM and CQW, that's it. Even do you remember when Red River College had their station?
Yes. Oh, I love that
Kick
station.
FM.
Yes, Kick FM.
And
they had some great shows on there.
Yeah, plus Marty Gold, who is so nuts, and now of course writes for the Free Press. I mean the Sun rather, which is I guess a good fit for him. Although he did talk about, I don't agree with him on most things, but he was talking about civic stuff, which was kind of I just don't think, there's not always kind of that local content, right?
Yeah.
Who's talking about the stuff. And it's weird now, we both use social media, and now that you can't, we have the ban on for the last couple of years on media, on so now it's like, so I'm talking to my partner Andy today, and I said something about there's a hoax right now that Trump that when he was shot a couple of years ago that was a setup.
Okay.
Like the moon landing.
Yeah.
And I was telling Andy about this, and Andy was like, "Oh, well, it's true, blah blah blah." And then I'm just like, "What are you talking about?" And then they go, "Oh, I just get all my news from Facebook." Because this is the problem. You take away the actual news, and then what is left? I mean, it's just garbage. And one thing that's really upsetting for me is like the AI stuff, because a lot of people, I'm getting I can tell, and if I'm not sure about something, whether it's like a photo or a text, there's places on the internet where you can just check. And sometimes I'll just go and check, and it'll be like, oh yeah, 93% chance that this was made by Chat GPT or whatever. And there's like stories, like even history, even in the area of history, there's stories. There was this story about Frank Sinatra and how he was such a mensch because, his during the filming of this movie, one of the cast members, his daughter was in a car accident, and Frank Sinatra, gave him the time off and gave him this money. And there was this whole story. And I'm like, well, that just seems like a nice story. But I thought it seemed something was a bit off. And I looked on the internet, did not exist anywhere except for this AI story and not even so what's the point?
Yeah.
Why are they even, so that's like kind of, as a person who, sort of educates and deals with information and whatever, you must not love that.
No, I and for me, part of the joy of doing history is the research itself. So, if I'm writing a blog post, I won't even go to somewhere that already has a write-up, even a reputable source, right? I'll kind of start from scratch and see what I can put together. I've seen on a lot of history sites, people will put in a chat, and they'll even have chat, tell me the history of this building, and they'll quote it back to you, and it's like, what's so fun or interesting?
Well, and sometimes
it's that, and sometimes it's wrong, because buildings have, there's the same building, buildings have had the same name over, a course of a century, so sometimes it'll start with what was the Maxwell building in 1800, and you end up with a completely different build. It's talking about the history of a completely different building at the end. So.
And have you seen the thing where people sometimes use AI to sort of clean up old photos, and it actually changes them? I saw one the other day, and it's like, it sort of looked like the same picture, and they'd cleaned it up or colorized it, or they'd done something. But then all of a sudden, there was a table in the back that had flowers on it, and all of a sudden, there's cereal boxes on it. I didn't notice it right away until this, because the person was like, look at this and look at this, because the AI can do great and interesting things, but also there's a lot of it that's just slop, and it's just not
and in a way, even an example like that, you're changing history, because that will be the photo going forward, that this lady was standing in a nice part, instead of in her ramshackle kitchen, it was a nice parlor with flowers next to her.
And once something is out on the internet, it's out. It's it's gone. Now, so you do the Manitoba Archives. You find a lot of your stuff there, probably, and then
Actually, not really. So I started blogging back in 2008, and at that time, to get a lot of the information I do, even on the odd occasion, depending on what I was researching, remember microfiche? Yeah. Do that, or I'd have to go to the library, or I'd have to go to one of the archives to look things up. And what has happened really since that time is sadly not so much the Winnipeg or the Manitoba archives, but a lot of archives have started putting things online. So things like Henderson street directories, up from like 1876 to 1965, you can look at them online. Some archives have put collections online, image collections online. So I would say of all the research and blogging I do and the history walk stuff I do, 95% of it is I can do from home. I just know where to go.
And a lot of that is like the newspaper archives, right? Like
So I like to write, I don't know, I can't call it the social history of buildings. Like I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to talk too much about the arches and the columns and stuff. But I want to know who lived there. So I can find out sometimes who built the building and all of the different people who have lived there over the course of a century or so. And then you can find out what they did for a living and different things that happened to the house. So it's really newspapers, street directories, and then kind of just a general archive search, because you never know. Like the U of M has done a wonderful job putting things online, and it has obscure history books and little newspapers that maybe only lasted 3 or 4 years. So sometimes you can search their archives and somebody's name will pop up, and So
well, that's one of the great things about the internet, and I suppose some of that is powered by a certain kind of AI, and I mean that's one of the great things is accessibility, because then you can do that from anywhere.
When I started, it was if I was looking into a building, it would require library or archive time, which would cut me out of the loop. It wasn't until more of this stuff started becoming available online that
I like to call you Winnipeg's architectural coroner, because every time a building burns down, you write something about it, which is like, you could just write about whatever building burns down this week.
It actually, for a while, it was like that. It was like every week something was burning down, and I can triage a pretty quick history of a building if I have to, and that's part of it. I want to tell the stories that a building has, and of course, once the building burns down or gets knocked down, those stories go with it. People forget, even like the Sutherland Hotel. I was driving by the other day, and it was like, what used to? Oh yeah, that was Sutherland. It starts fading from your memory once it becomes an empty lot.
I was in the Sutherland before that, not long before that, because they, I guess they were gutting it, and they were going to turn it into, affordable housing or some kind of, something. And I was in there, and we were removing all the old radiators. And we removed like all the radiators from the building because they were changing the heating system.
No elevator.
No elevator. Some of it, they were just literally, I was taking the stuff over to the scrap place. I wasn't the guy, I wasn't the guy making $15 an hour under the table to smash them up or whatever. But some of them, like, they would like push off of the, there was a fire escape up there, and they would just push off because it was some of them were quite big. But it was interesting, and it was too bad. It was just kind of, it was just too bad when it burned down. Like, I think they seemed to be, whoever owned it seemed to be making some kind of good faith effort to turn it into something else. And I feel like before I start cooking on this, we're a quarter of the way through, and I just want to remind everyone, it is Pledge-orama right now. So if you're, if it's the end of April still or whatever, and you're listening to this or you're watching this, go to the website umfm.com, or I think it was 204-474-6610. I think that was what it was. You can call if that's pizza or something. My apologies, but I think it's the station, and people happy to talk to you and take your pledges. You're not really going to hear this anywhere else. I guarantee you that. I am here with historian Christian Cassidy, who does a does a column every week in the Free Press.
Every month in the
every month,
in the
sorry.
Free Press community review,
Yeah.
and then West End Dumplings.
And
is
then
my
you're
main
writing
blog.
your, like, what do you do, a couple of week blog posts, or it depends on how busy you
Yeah,
are?
I try. Yeah, it kind of depends. You know, you don't know. So I have West End Dumplings, which has got general history,
Yeah.
and Winnipeg Places, which
Yeah.
is building history.
Yeah.
And you never know until you dive into a
Yeah.
building. Oh, can I
Yeah.
research this over the course of a weekend, or
Yeah.
is this going to be a 3-week long journey? So sometimes you get periods where nothing's happening, and then 3
Yeah.
buildings in a week. So
But what I wanted to say was, like, and this is just kind of a pet peeve of mine that, so, I mean, you know this, but I'll tell everybody else, like, there's one national building code, and it's the same for new buildings as it is for old buildings. Now, when you're retrofitting an old building, the city inspectors will give you maybe 5 or 10% kind of leeway on
leeway,
certain
okay,
things
yeah.
if it's a building that's already existing. Like our old place in Gary, it was 2 buildings that were stuck together, and they were the second floor was a different height.
Okay.
And so we had an events room, and the fire inspector came when we were sort of at the end of our renos. Actually, we might have even been open already, because you'd get like regular visits every year or two from the fire inspector. And he came and he was like, well, this is no good. Your doors to this room open in to the room, and they're supposed to open out. But we had this big staircase right there, and just stairs, and
Okay.
you're supposed to have a landing and all this stuff. And he just looked at it, and he couldn't even tell me what I should do to fix it, because there was no way to fix it.
Okay,
Like, it was
yeah.
impossible. And then he just was like, all right, fine. But, there's no upside for these inspectors to, put themselves out on the line for you.
Yeah.
So, and their job is to make sure that people follow the building code, which is fine. But I really wish that there was a separate building code or something for retrofitting old buildings. Because what happens is, as you know, is like, people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to do something in here, and then they realize they can't do it, because as soon as you start touching stuff, you have to do this. So then the building sits vacant, and then it burns the fuck down. My friend bought this building down here at the end of Logan. The gray building right at Logan and Disraeli? There's a gray brick building.
Yeah. Used to be a car place.
Yeah, so my friend Louise May, who's the person who saved the LeMay Forest down in, and then got fined $10,000 or whatever. So she has a farm down in St. Norbert, and she bought this building, and she was going to turn it into a kind of an urban farm or something. They had this big plan.
Cool.
But all the stuff they wanted to do, was going to cost $1 million, like literally a literal $1 million. And so now it's just being used, for storage by Main Street Project, and so it's too, I just feel like it's too bad that like this building that we're in right now. So for people who you can't see the rest of it, and so for people who are listening, or people who aren't in the know, we're in an old church. It was built in 1901, actually a little bit before, and then moved over here. But there was no building code then, one presumes. The stairs in some spots were like this, and this wide. Like, there was just a bunch of things that they did to kind of suit whatever their needs were at the time. And so, yeah, that's just a pet peeve of mine, that I wish that, I just wish that we had some other kind of system.
Yeah. No, that's right. And I think you would get even more leeway, say, if you had a marble and brick building in the Exchange District or something like that. But it's neighborhoods like this, off Logan Avenue, Point Douglas, North End, that it probably hurts the most, because you have buildings that people want to start their first grocery in, or something like that, and you're not going to spend $1 million fixing up a building. So it I think disproportionately hurts neighborhoods that are older neighborhoods with a lot of older buildings, that really it sometimes stands in the way.
But even in
of
the
them being fixed
even
up.
even in the Exchange and downtown and whatever, there's buildings like. When was the last time you were in the old Masonic Temple at Ellis and Donald?
Chris Walby had a restaurant
Yeah,
there.
I was in there at one point. I don't remember if it was when we were looking and ended up with this place, or if it was even before when we were looking and ended up with the place on Gary. But I was in that building because it was it's been for lease and for sale for like 20. I don't know if 20 years, but a long time.
Yeah, it seems like a
long
decade
time.
or so, yeah.
And when I was in there, they had taken all the floors out.
Okay.
So you were in there, and it was just like.
Oh, it's just a
It was
shell.
stairs that ran around. It was
Okay.
very weird. And you actually walked in, even the main floor was gone because you kind of just would step down into like a gravel. It didn't have a basement, but like kind of like down this this far, like sort of what would have been the crawl space.
Yeah.
And that was like a million years ago. And like, it still has a sign up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's somebody owns it. Somebody is, the city hasn't taken it. Somebody's paying the property taxes on it. It's very mysterious.
There was a proposal once upon a time to put, and I don't know if it was an emergency staircase or something, but something that would cantilever over Ellis Avenue a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And that got rejected
Yeah.
because the historic building
Yeah.
and things, that could have been 15 years ago for all I know. And yeah, it's just kind of sat there.
And I think, I don't know, like, what are some other buildings? The St. Charles Hotel.
Yeah.
That guy said he was going to, what was he going to turn it into? A boutique hotel
Boutique
or something?
hotel, yeah.
But, what did he want? I mean, didn't he have some kind of thing with the
It was
city?
a neighboring building he wanted to knock down
Yeah.
to make the entrance, and the city wouldn't let him, so he just sat on it.
Yeah.
There's recently been an announcement, though, about St. Charles, that he has reached a deal with a developer
Yeah.
that they are going to redevelop the hotel. Yeah.
It's just,
So-
it's so interesting because there's like, I lived in a house in Point Douglas where they cut the lot in half.
Okay.
But instead of instead of it being a double wide lot that they cut in half, like a lot of those places in Armstrong Point, it was on a corner, and they cut it. Just a regular lot like this, and they cut it in the middle, and so we had no backyard. Like our backyard was just. There was a fence and there was another house.
Okay.
And we were like, 80, I can't remember what the address was, but it was like 87 and a half or 89 and a half or something.
yeah.
And something like that I guess maybe they did, trying to think, it seemed like maybe they did it around 1950 or something.
Probably a post-war. Post-war, there was huge, even on this street here on Fountain Street,
Yeah.
you can see an old house and then a little 1950 house.
Yeah.
Stuck in next
But
to
the
it.
funny thing is, like, the things that they allowed them to do, like,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis zoning and stuff like that you'd never see now. The best example of that, I feel like, is on Selkirk. Where you've got all those houses that go right up to the sidewalk. They've built the weird things on the front. And there's so many ugly places along there that, like, because you would never, I don't know when that was when they were allowing it, but I mean, there was a time when it was different.
Yeah, I mean, you can see along Ellis Avenue, around my part of town, a lot of the storefronts that you see come up to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
If you look around back, you can see the little peak of a
Yeah.
1900 house. So you just kind of made do. If
Yeah.
you wanted to open a store, you had the option of
Yeah.
sticking something onto the front of your building. I think it made neighborhoods kind of probably more interesting because in the years since no businesses can go,
Yeah.
in this part, and this is industrial, and this is
Yeah.
strictly residential,
Yeah.
and you had just much more of a mix. I mean, there's fewer and fewer of them over the years, but in the West End, you get a lot of places where you go down a residential block, and boom, you'd have a factory in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That just
Yeah.
small little, but yeah, so it was much more mixed, much more, I guess, hands off back then.
Even here, so we're right on Logan. for rezoning, we had to have a parking plan, you know, and we're like, Logan is a commercial street, and this is a, you know, non-residential building that's been sitting here for 125 years,
Yeah.
and we still had to do that. And I mean, there's places like, because what I was thinking about was like there's places where there's churches in the middle of the block too, and I mean,
In some cases,
with
massive church.
no parking.
Yeah,
at
I
all.
mean, St. Matthew's Church, which is now West End Commons, so
Yeah.
they put housing into it, but
Yeah.
that had, I think it was 1,200 or 1,300 people capacity.
Wow.
Same with Westminster Church on,
I-
that all have no parking.
But
lots.
also, I think, I mean, now that I think of it, like some of these places, you know, if we're talking like, you know, turn of the other century, not everybody. I mean, people were walking and taking public transit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there was not the same, you know, every person didn't have a car
Yeah.
all to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and the streetcar, you know, most of the, when you see those, there would have been
Yeah.
a streetcar within a block
Yeah.
of that
So,
factory
so
or
it was
that church.
it was a non-issue. I mean, that's
And,
what
and also people lived where, like, this for part of its time was Ukrainian Catholic, but it was also a Swedish church.
Yeah.
And this stretch of Logan
yeah,
was Little Sweden
yeah.
back in the day.
So
none,
funny.
none of the original buildings are around
Yeah.
anymore because we're just so close to the rail line.
Yeah.
That industrial development, you know, sort of took over all those buildings and they all got knocked down. But this and the church at Laura, is it like a block away?
Ellen.
Ellen, or kind of
Yeah.
the two remnants of that
Yeah.
Scandinavian neighborhood that was here. So people lived where, then that's
Yeah.
where you built your churches. That's where you built
Yeah.
your school, whether it was a German school or, you know, whatever. You built
Yeah.
it in the neighborhood where people lived. Whereas, of course, now the problem with all the downtown churches is
Yeah.
you have a massive church that might be Lutheran, but
Yeah.
there are no Lutherans within, you know, 20 kilometers of the church.
This was sort of one of my. This has kind of been one of my complaints about. I haven't heard it that much lately, but you used to always hear, you know, the Exchange District needs a grocery store. It needs a grocery store because it doesn't have that, and if we want people to live around here, you know. And the funny thing is, like all those places they built on Waterfront Drive are all expensive. People all have cars, and people are all driving to Costco. Nobody's, you know what I mean? Like it's a different, it's just a different kind of a thing. I used to own a house on Balmoral in West Broadway, and you know we had all those places, not all of them, but like most of them had like a nice big porch, you know, and then in the back you'd have a shitty little garage or just a parking pad, but like everything pointed towards the street.
Yeah.
Right? And because it was 1909, and so yeah, people were walking, they were taking public transit, they were riding their bikes, so everything just pointed out on the street. And now, you know, in the last number of years, like I'm just always so horrified by all those suburban houses where where it looks like a garage with an attached house. You know, you've got a big giant two car garage, and then there's a little thing
little
here,
side door.
and the house is there, and it's just like really? That's you know, and I understand because people are driving in there, but and then the deck or whatever is on the back, you know, and I understand why people want that, but it seems a bit kind of sad to me. It just seems like a, you know, kind of a different. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, the focus. So yeah, we've turned inwards,
Yeah.
you know, rather than outwards into the community, which is kind of how it started.
Yeah.
And you know, you go from your house into your garage. You don't even have to go outside, and drive home,
Yeah.
get into your garage, go back into your house.
And we do you know Ian McCausland?
Yes. I
Yeah.
do.
So Ian, I had him on here a couple of months ago, and we were talking about a bunch of things. But one of the things we were talking about, he's a big sort of advocate for safe streets because people like pedestrians and cyclists are getting killed like pretty often. Somebody was killed like yesterday or something. You know, so there's lots of talk about lowering certain speed limits to 30 or 40 or what do you think about the speed limit thing?
I do agree with like the 40 limit or something like that. I mean, the 30.
30 is so
I live
slow.
in a school
Yeah.
zone,
Yeah.
and it's really
Yeah.
noticeable when you're going 30.
Yeah.
And I think 30 is big in European countries,
Yeah.
where if you've ever driven in Dublin or London or something,
Yeah.
it's all little
Yeah.
streets with cars parked on both sides,
Yeah.
and one lane down the middle.
I have I have two vehicles. I have my little tiny truck, which has a little tiny engine, and then I drive an old 4Runner. And when I'm going through a school zone, I mean, I have to like go on the gas.
Yeah,
On the gas.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I can't. I can barely even drive 30.
Yeah.
I'm always careful around your house because I've gotten a ticket over there on St. Matthews.
St. Matthews, that guy has been there since
Yeah.
the day they introduced street
Yeah.
count. I want to get a historic plaque for for the 10th anniversary of that truck sitting there with the traffic camera.
They must make
It
some
made a lot of money for the
over
city.
there, yeah.
Well, and also because St. Matthews is a truck route, and you can't
This
think
is-
of it as more of a
that's-
regional,
that's
and
the
then
thing.
suddenly it becomes
Yeah.
a residential street,
Yeah.
and then
Another one.
because like if that was Ellis Avenue that
Yeah.
you were driving down,
And
you
another-
wouldn't have those speed zones.
Another one that I find confusing like that is Burroughs, because Burroughs also has a school zone.
Okay.
So does Talbot, has two school zones.
Yes.
And at some point, it's very kind of commercial, and then it just changes, and it's you really have to pay attention.
But the idea about the residential school or residential speed limits, taking them down by 10K, it'll hopefully also encourage more people just to go on the road. It's like, well, I'm not gonna go down Burnell. It's like I might as well just go over onto Arlington where I can drive the regular. So I think that it could have a way of kind of decreasing the amount of traffic on some of these residential streets.
Arlington. So now you live right off Arlington. Is Arlington a lot quieter now that the bridge is closed?
It
Because it doesn't go anywhere anymore, really.
No, and that was always my route. So most of my friends and family live in like North Kildonan area.
Yeah.
So I would go straight up,
Yeah.
Arlington to like Inkster, and then curl around and go over the Chief Peguis Bridge. And I think it is noticeably quieter. It's made Logan busier, I think.
Yeah.
But it is.
Oh, yeah,
especially
Logan.
when you get on to the north side of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to sit, like I can sit at a side street and count the number of cars, and turn. You used to have to always go to the light, because if you didn't have a light, you weren't crossing Arlington, right? Now you can just sit in a side street without a light.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
give it a few seconds, and there'll be a big gap. in the traffic.
Logan is a lot busier. Like there's about an hour and a half, between 3:45 to 5:15 or whatever, where you have to cross at a light. You're never going to get across the street.
Yeah. And that I've noticed, because that's the route I've had to change to, and it's like, oh my God, I can't, even on a Sunday afternoon, it's like, what's this traffic?
Yeah.
But
I am Kelly Hughes. I am here talking with Christian Cassidy, historian and tree man and other things. We are on UMFM in the middle of Pledge-O-Rama, which is our annual, pledge time. What do you call that? What do you call that? Fund? I don't know.
Community appeal
Thank
for funds.
you. Yeah, and I think we're trying to raise $30,000 or $35,000, which is not that much if there's a lot of people. So go to umfm.com or call. I'm not going to give out the number. I think the number's wrong. Anyway, go over there.
They usually have lovely prizes, don't they, at certain categories?
Yeah, there's
so check it out. Click
There's
on
stuff.
click on the link, and they have toques and
I
T-shirts.
don't even know what it is, but yeah. What are they doing with the Arlington Bridge?
Well, I mean, the Arlington Bridge is going to come down. It's going to be demolished. The city spends a lot of money, like high six figures every year, just to keep it standing.
Yeah.
So they're in that kind of weird spot.
Well, I've noticed that there's a big gate there, and I noticed that in the winter they were keeping it plowed.
Yeah, that's how.
Is it just a weight thing?
Yeah. That's why they don't paint. Like if you look at the Redwood Bridge, and you look at the Arlington Bridge, and I think even the Louise Bridge, those are painted. They stopped painting the Arlington Bridge back in the 60s because of weight. That's why there's no buses run on it, or
Sorry,
it's not
even the
truck-
paint?
Yeah.
Even the extra
Think of a structure that that
weight?
heavy duty paint,
Wow.
the weight of that. So they stopped painting it. So that's why it's all
That's
kind
interesting.
of rusted metal looking versus the redwood, which has kind of a silver,
Yeah.
silver paint on it. So so it's gonna come down. There's nothing in the budget to replace it.
Lots of scrappers around there. They should just give it a couple of blowtorches and.
Yeah, they should. And the problem, of course, you got the rail yards underneath.
Yeah.
So you can't just send a bunch of wreckers in there and stuff. Like, it has to be pretty much dismantled.
Yeah.
Piece by piece. And so right now, the cost of upkeeping the bridge as an empty bridge is cheaper than
Yeah.
getting it all. Getting it like dismantled with one of the largest rail yards in the country running right underneath it.
It's never been my bridge. It's too steep. I've never really liked it. And sometimes in my little truck, especially if I've got stuff in the back, I feel like I'm not going to make it up to the top.
I had an old Ford Falcon that would just barely. I'd have to wait for all the traffic to pass, and then I'd have to take a.
How long have you lived in the West End?
2005 or so, 20 years.
Yeah.
Like I lived on West Broadway for 10 years before that. So,
Yeah.
and then just moved across to the grittier side of the North Wolseley, as we call ourselves.
North Wolseley. It has. It's interesting because you have done a walking tour of this area, and so I learned a lot of things when you did that. But one thing that was so interesting to me is how you talk about the kind of the different layers of immigration or of people moving into an area. Now it's the Chinese people, now it's these people, now it's these people, and so it is interesting. And the West End is a very interesting example of that. Where you've had all this turnover of different people, and you can see it in the businesses and
and the different churches. Everything from the Scandinavian Lutheran Church from kind of day one to West Central Mosque. Is there. And
so who's in ascendancy right now in the West End? Where are the
African?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of folks from African countries coming in. Filipino is the largest group that was there. Like when I moved in, so 21 years ago or so, it was still very Portuguese.
Yeah.
And it was quite Filipino.
Yeah.
And over time, and then there's a large indigenous community as well.
Yeah.
But over time, I've seen obviously African, West African, have come in. They've taken over some of the corner stores, and you get a little Ethiopian corner shop and that type of thing. So it is a neighborhood, because then the generation before that, it was the Vietnamese boat people, that came and settled in the area, and so it's just it's one of those neighborhoods that's just welcomed whatever the latest wave of newcomers is. It was one of those neighborhoods.
I shop at that
people
No
settled
Frills.
in.
I shop at that No Frills on Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, okay.
And there's always sometimes I'm like, sometimes I feel think maybe I'm the only white person in there.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll go somewhere like Charleswood or North Kildonan, or I'll go somewhere and I'll be in a store and I'll be like, why are there so many white people in here? What's wrong? Oh, it's just all white people in here. It is interesting. And my grandparents came from Italy. I think just after World War I, and my grandfather had a store just over here, but just over here at the corner of William and Sherbrooke, where they've got the big shiny new glass HSC building. Mm-hmm. He had a brownstone, and then of course and actually I think at one point there were lots of Italians in the West End too, weren't there?
there were, I've come across, some
Because
big,
that's
some
where
big
my
Italian,
that's where my
Italias and stuff like that.
yeah,
all
because
came from there.
my great aunt in the 70s, she was old, but she lived in the she lived on, I think, Home Street, north on Home Street.
Yep.
And then people kind of, people move around, and sometimes people, like a lot of the Jewish people went from the North End to Tuxedo.
There are no synagogues left. I think there might be one tiny one, but for the large scale, was it Beth Chaim or something in the North End? That was the last of the large scale, and they sold and they moved down south about 3-4 years ago, and that was it. When you think of how much history,
there still is the funeral home.
Yes, that's right. And they expanded that
right?
recently, so that's staying, obviously. And there are a couple of really tiny little places, but all of
But
those.
it is interesting how sometimes, I imagine that the Scandinavian cohort here, that they must have sort of broken up and moved into different areas. Yeah. But it is interesting how sometimes you see, and I've noticed this a lot more now than say 30 years ago, that a lot of areas like South St. Vital, lots of Black people in that area, lots of, people kind of, because I guess then when the businesses come up, people want to sort of, there's a store that's got the stuff that I like. There's a church. There's the church. That's
exactly.
my thing. There's the mosque. There's this. There's that. And so people kind of congregate in those areas. But what's interesting to me, I guess, is that you're now seeing it more. What I was talking about, like around here in the West End, you're seeing that more in certain suburbs. You're seeing that kind of become.
Yeah. So go down South Pembina and you go to the mall that Stone Angel used to be in,
right?
And I think there's a couple of non-Chinese businesses, but for the most part, you go around back. There's a Chinese grocery at the front, and around back, there's whole strip malls of just Chinese and
businesses.
there was and they would have been in Chinatown, right? They would have been just a block this way, 50 years ago.
Yeah, and also that's an interesting thing, because a lot of those folks are people there's a lot of people that came as students to U of M, so that's part of that. Is that's an area that they're familiar with.
Sure.
And a lot of the people that have come are, most of them, the Chinese folks, are from mainland China, and of course most of the folks that came here 100 years ago or whatever were from Hong Kong, and they didn't even speak the same language. Like, it's Cantonese. So it is interesting. I think that they sometimes struggle a little bit with the Chinese Cultural Center and with Chinatown and with this community. They struggle to kind of keep it sort of going, because everybody's like 100. And then even when you see like the dragon dance thing, like in the drums and stuff, like sometimes it's all white people.
No, the population similar to churches, like this. I mean, the Ukrainian Catholics all moved away from here. The Scandinavians
the
moved away from here.
The Ukrainian thing is so interesting to me, because we've been, in this place for about 10 years, and they, at some point, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, now there's Ukrainian Catholic and Ukrainian Orthodox, but the Ukrainian Catholic Church was closing a couple of churches a year, because it was kind of sort of moribund, I guess. And then now in the last few years since the war, we've had all these Ukrainian people move here, and all these churches, I think, must be a kind of a boon, for these churches and these cultural organizations and whatever, to have, people who speak the language and people who, so that's just seems like an interesting...
And a revival of that.
Yeah, a revival.
Someplace where I noticed that is when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in, I dated a girl for a lot of years in the Russell area. So Russell, Foxwarren, all of that area. And, a lot of the, small town churches were, closed, or would have service one time, one time a month. And I had a friend whose brother was the priest that would go and had that district. And it would just be like 1 week would do a different place. Maybe 3-4 years ago, I went back up there, and there's been so much Filipino.
Oh, yeah.
immigration into those areas that like Neepawa, up to like Russell. The Russell Church has its own pastor and a deacon, and it has services every Sunday, and the place is packed.
I am not surprised, because you see these places like I grew up when I was young. I grew up Catholic, and all these places and my family was, as I said, Italian. So all these places like Holy Rosary and St. Ignatius that were full of Italians before. If you drive by on a Sunday morning now, when they're letting out, it's full of Filipinos. And so, so that's, and I mean, that's one of the, that's, what you're talking about with these buildings that just kind of outlast, whatever initial thing they were doing, or whoever the initial sort of people that it was for, they're gone, and then it's for these people. So it is interesting, because it is, the buildings are they kind of hold these stories of the people that were in them. One of the things that's so interesting to me, and I just need to keep reminding myself, this is UMFM, Kelly Hughes Live Slices, one guest, 1 hour on Kelly Hughes. My guest is Christian Cassidy, historian and all-around great guy. And we're in the middle of Pledge-O-Rama. So go to umfm.com and make your pledge. There's so many interesting shows, and this is one of them. So please do that. One of the things that's so interesting to me is, like, when you look stuff up, like, you'll write about something, and I'll be like when you're writing your piece, you're the only person in the world that knows this thing, right? This is a thing that everyone has forgotten, and nobody knows, and you pull this thing out. Like, how does that feel to pull something out, and you're like, and then you tell everybody, and now we all know, and it lives on the internet forever. But
it's something that's very enjoyable. I've never, even when I started, doing the historical research, I wasn't interested in the people that were in the history books all the time. I wasn't interested in the biggest house on the block. When I started doing walking tours, I was working for a neighborhood revitalization corp, and I just did them as a summer thing, and I would do 2 blocks on Victor, and the following week 2 blocks on Home Street, and I would look for the smallest house on the street. It's like, I want to know who lived there. I want to know who, and so as a result, so I look in neighborhoods like this. I mean, nobody's ever, there's no history book on the Centennial neighborhood. So I do realize when I'm looking up stuff that, oftentimes it's I'm not discovering, but I'm rediscovering people for the first time, writing about people who, just compiling bits of information. So that does feel good, because that, to me, it's the stories of kind of the buildings and the people who lived in them that, these are the people who really built the city. We've written a lot about, politicians who make political decisions to influence something, or financiers or bank presidents who financed something to happen. But the people who swung the hammers and taught the school children and drove the streetcars and broke their back over here at the CPR, at 50 years hard labor in the train yards. Those are the people who built the city. And they're not in the history books, and that's why I like finding.
They're not even on Wikipedia. I did something years ago. I did something that was really interesting and would have been really good. I called it. So how Wikipedia, you can, because it's sort of open source, you can use that, use the skeleton of that to make. You've seen other ones that look just like Wikipedia. I had bought a website, and I was creating something called Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I was going to write, and we were already doing all kinds of, entering stuff, things that you would never see anywhere else, because they're only interesting to people here, I guess. But we, because of the sort of the open source nature or something, we got a virus, and the whole thing the whole thing just kind of fell apart. But that was too bad. But I do love, that there are, even people dig out old videos, people will digitize, they'll find an old video, and look, it's Natalie Pollock and she's 20 years old and she's doing something, you know, like it's, that's one thing that I love about the internet is that once people put those things up and like your stuff, like it's just there forever.
Stick around.
And that thing's,
and I like too that if I put something, if I write about, oh my God, this was the first person who ever did this in the city. Look, and I'll compile stuff. The nice thing is once it's out there too, somebody else can build on that.
Yeah.
Or what I like about writing a blog, because people say, oh, why don't you write a book? Why don't you write? And I like the blog because 4 years after something has been up on the internet, I'll get an email saying, oh my God, that was my great uncle. And let me give you more details about it. And, you know, I can expand and fill that in. And or other people that might write a book might take, you know, there's a couple of Canadian encyclopedia entries that quote by, like, one of them is Joe Keeper, Manitoba's fastest runner.
Right.
From Norway House creation. This is World War I era. Just compiled a bunch of stuff. I wrote this back when I did write for the regular Free Press, and I got 2-page spread, wrote about him, and it was probably the most that was ever written about him. And now it's being quoted, now it's being included, and I get contacted by people writing books saying, where did you find that photograph? And, you know, and that's really a good, a good feeling.
That's the good side of it, and not to be a bummer in the last 5 minutes, but what about when people like take your original research and reuse it and don't credit you, and they, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's an odd thing, and that's something that kind of one of the downsides of online, like I've had people like not even put a little effort into it and copy and paste, but have actually screen capped, you know, and just cut out the West End Dumplings logo at the top, and then we'll start up a Facebook page called, you know, blah, blah history, and it'll be like here, you know, and it'll be, and I don't understand that. Usually if you can kind of publicly shame them sometimes, but some people, you know, some people don't. I don't know why. Like, to me, the interest is not showing off. That to me, the interesting part is doing the research. Like even the writing, the blog, or the walking tours are kind of like a necessary evil. If I want to share my research with people, I got to do that. But for me, it's you know, the excitement is in the aha. You know, after 5 or 6 days, it's like, I found that picture of the guy. You know, I've been writing about him, found everything I could, and in some obscure, you know, Minnesota history book, I found a picture of him, and it's like, there we go, done. It's like, oh yeah, now I gotta write it up, and you know, so so I don't know what joy people get just kind of taking somebody else's stuff and putting it up and claiming that's theirs. It's like you should try to get the excitement of actually, you know, looking that stuff up. And it does make it bad, and I will say, because especially on Facebook, like there's whole websites that are just photos taken from. And the problem with that too is you don't know where they originated then, because they'll have no dates, they'll have no photographer. It won't say, oh, taken from, you know, the University of Saskatchewan archives or the St. Boniface archives. So if you're a researcher and you want to follow up on that, there is zero information. You know, if you're trying to pass it off as, oh, this is from my personal photo collection, there's zero information for someone like me to follow up on. I can't use those photos. I can't publish you know, if I'm doing a thing in the Free Press, I can't really use that photo because I don't know whose source it is, and if it's a newer photo, is there copyright involved? I don't know what year it is, so I don't know if it suits what I'm writing about.
Unfortunately, I mean, sometimes people don't even care. Like, when you, like, I'll tell people, like, I'll say, hey, this thing that you posted isn't, you know, this isn't real, or this is, you know, not right, or this is, you know, whatever. Oh, well, you know, I like it. Because one of my big problems with AI is not just that it's not true, it's that they train these AI models on the work that other people did. So whether you're a writer or an artist, and
I can tell because I write about some pretty obscure things. So I'll know, as you said before, I'm the only person that has ever written about the history of that house. So if somebody throws something from, you know, ChatGPT at me saying, well, this is what I found about the house. And it's like, that's probably from my website because nobody else has written about it.
That's a ChatGPT version of what I said. we've just got 2 or 3 minutes left. I want to remind everybody it is Pledge-O-Rama here at UMFM. If you're listening to this on the radio, and even if you're just watching it on the video, you can please still go to umfm.com. Lots of great shows on the station, and we would love to have your support. I want to talk about, just briefly, because we only have 2 minutes, but like the ghost signs. You know, when they tear something down, or when something gets burned down, and then all of a sudden there's a sign. Like, how do you feel when somebody paints over it or covers it or something?
That's too bad. Actually, on your old building, J. Norris Taylor.
Yeah. There was this sign that, you know, when the building next door was torn down, this sign that popped up that said, hey, this is a thing that was in this building before. And I thought, that's really cool. That's the thing that says something. And it wasn't even just an ad. It says who was in this building.
It was J. Norris Taylor, and that ad stayed up through so many incarnations of that build. Nobody touched that sign because J. Norris was a Hong Kong prisoner of war.
Really?
And he was a big guy in the prisoner of war stories. He was well known back in his day, and so nobody touched that sign. And then a bar from Alberta came in, and the first thing they did was painted over the sign. Yeah.
And then, actually, I don't know if you know this, but the paint actually peeled off. The paint peeled off from the first time they painted it, and I thought that they would, you know, they should maybe take that as a sign that, you know, but nope, they found a better way to paint over it.
So some people just don't like. I remember there was a place in St. James where they tore down a building, and this huge, like this whole side of this building, and some guy like chased me out. He was like an accountant or something.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, and it was like, look, so-and-so stores and Buckingham cigarettes and something like that's the history of this little piece of St. James there. Didn't get it.
Yeah.
Had absolutely no idea.
I don't understand that kind of mindset. But the building that we were talking about with the J. Norris Taylors was 274 and 276 Gary, which we used to own. And I didn't go in there for a long time after, because I was kind of, just was a bit difficult for me. It was a bit challenging for me. Oh, there's my timer. And I better turn it off. Oh, it's done. So we've just got another minute. But I finally went in like a year or two ago, and when I initially, you know, talked to the architect who was doing the thing, and he said, "Oh, we're gonna keep the old features. We're gonna keep the tin ceiling." We had a tin ceiling that we spent $10,000 to save. Long story that I won't get into, and I went in there a year or two ago, finally, after many years, and they just gutted the whole thing, and it looked like nothing. And I just thought, you know, I mean, it was just, they didn't save a thing. You know what? They saved there was a sunroof, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I just sort of thought, it just seemed too bad. It just seemed like, you know.
And it's too bad. And that's part of why I do what I do, is I want to tell the story of these buildings so that, you know, I mean, not every building needs heritage protection or whatever. Yeah. But I think if you know the story behind, you know, if I did a better job of who J. Norris Taylor was, or if that got around more, you know, if that got around more, maybe somebody wouldn't have painted it over.
It's not your fault.
It's not something you would have to legislate or something, but something that, hey, if a lot of people knew that, somebody would go and say, you really want to paint that? You know the story behind that sign, right? So.
Well, maybe if you keep doing that, maybe
I'll keep
turn things
banging
around.
my head against the wall. Yeah.
We could sit here and talk for another hour, but we're done. Thank you so much, Christian Cassidy.
My pleasure, Kelly. Always nice to be here at the Valley.
Come back another time, and we'll talk for another hour.
Absolutely.
This is Kelly Hughes. This has been Kelly Hughes Live Slices here on YouTube and UMFM. UMFM Pledge-O-Rama. Please go to umfm.com and check that out. We'd love to have you send us a few bucks over there. So thank you so much, Christian. Should we say what's on your shirt?
Yes.
Art will save us all. You were supposed to say it too.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Art will save us all.
Art will save us all.
There we go. Thanks, everybody.